Hello everybody and welcome back to CCIE Labs with myself, James Haddix. Our next lab is going to look at layer 2 ether channel, also known as port channeling. I did this lab by myself a couple hours ago and it seemed to work fine. And then after I did a reload on it and I'm running off a virtual machine, I ended up running into some issues trying to redo the lab again. So I'm going to take a little bit different according to what the lab book says, just because I don't think the configurations are loading up properly. But anybody that deals with port channels and Cisco's understands that they tend to have a quirky behavior, especially in the case that you have to remove the port channel from the interface to make changes. Sometimes you have to do something special to the interface while it's either in the port channel or most of the time outside of it. So it's a little bit of a headache sometimes. But most seasoned Cisco folks have run into this issue at least once or twice. So in this lab, we're going to configure port channels between switch 1 and 2, 1 and 4, and 1 and 3. We need to make sure that there is no negotiation of the ether channel. We have to make sure that in the tunneling protocol that switch 1 is initiating .1Q. So I've got both of the switches up. Let's go ahead and bring up our virtualization lab here. And we're going to go ahead and start on switch 1. And look, I've already got it open. So I did some work ahead of time. I was trying to play around with some of the configuration. And this kind of helps point out a big thing that some people forget when configuring port channels. If you come from the Nexus world, then you probably know this a little bit better than folks from the route switch world. But in the data center world, Nexus, when you do configuration of port channels, there's a compatibility check that is done. Some of this compatibility is, the speed or the duplex or the allowed VLANs or the trunking or the administrative mode or the operational mode of the port. That same thing applies to switches. So as we said during the lab, we want to set up port channels that are going to be trunks. So as you see here, this is actually the port for one of the connections going to switch 2. So I'll go ahead and redo this if you guys can't see the configuration. But as you see right now, the operational mode is set to static access, and we want to change that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into config mode for both of the interfaces. Actually, we should do this for all of them since we're going to be configuring all of it. So INT range GI01 to 3 and GI10 to 2. And what we're going to do is switch port mode trunk. I don't think it's going to let me do this because I need to do the in cap. Yeah. So we're going to do switch port trunk dynamic desirable. And I don't think it's going to let me do that either. Switch port mode trunk. So right now it's set to auto. And that's so. Now it says the operational mode set to static access, which is not correct. Switch port. So we've set it to dynamic desirable. So now I want to take a look at the configuration of the port. So with that, we've got it set to negotiate, and right now the operational trunking encapsulation is set to ISL, which we do not want. So we'll do another config T. Actually, I'm going to try this because Nope, I take that back. So the trunk encapsulation is set to auto. I'm sorry, set to ISL. So we're going to, I want to see if this is actually going to work now. I'll do a port channel config, and we'll do a switch port mode dynamic desirable. Then we'll do switch port trunk encap .1q. And I want to see if we get the same error that we did when I did the apply the port channel. So one of the requirements was that there was supposed to be no negotiation of tunnels. So we're not going to use PAGP or LACP. We're just going to do mode on. And that is because the encap, so this compatibility check that it's done. So it brought the interfaces down, so we're actually going to have to no channel group 12. Again, that's a bad on my part, as part of the compatibility check. Again, checks the tagging, checks the trunk, so you have to make sure that the trunks themselves are actually, you have to make sure that the interfaces themselves are compatible also on the trunk encapsulation point. So we did a no channel group there, so now we'll do, right now we should be able to do the channel group. And we see that the line protocol is set to on. So let's see here. Let's do show Etherchannel summary. And this will show us that both of the ports are bundled into port channel 2, which is showing as a layer 2 device. So now we want to go to switch 2. And do the same thing. If it lets me. Okay. Actually, I think I already had it up and running, so. All right. So we're going to check the again, we're going to check the configuration of both the switch ports. And if you're noticing a delay on the screen, again, on virtual machines, when you're setting up port channeling, it tends to take up a lot of memory on the virtual server. So we are showing here that we're set to dynamic auto, and we've got negotiate on for the trunk encapsulation. So now we should be able to check this out. Now, one thing that you might notice is that when we did the first output, that the operational mode was set to static access, but the administrative mode was set to dynamic auto. Why did that change when we made the changes on switch 1? Well, obviously because when the other side of the port channel, both gigabit 1/1 and 1/2 are sending DTP packets, request packets over to switch 2, and since it's set into dynamic auto, it will set itself to a trunk once it receives those packets. So on this side, we should be able to do actually I need to figure the port here. So and then we're going to do, so we've created the port channel. There's nothing we really need to do on this end since all of the encapsulation is set on the other side. So we'll go into the INT range configuration, and then we'll do the channel mode or channel group. Takes a little second here. And then we should show that the port channel is up. So we'll do a show Ether channel 12. Oops. Show Ether channel summary. And we'll notice that we've got a group of the port channel. So, and another thing we want to check you'll notice that the port channel now is showing up in spanning tree, and it is that is a alternate. So one thing that is kind of quirky here is that it's showing 0/0 as the root, which that actually shouldn't be the case. Switch 1 is the root, but again, we're on a virtual server, so spanning tree tends to play some tricks. So let's see here. We'll make sure. All right. So in the lab topology or the physical topology, switch 1 is supposed to be the root. So a little extra exercise that we can do here is we're going to set this to the we'll set this actually to the root. So that's one way to do it. Actually, no. And then if we show a spanning tree again, it should show this as the root. And now everything, SCP is reconverging and learning everything right now. So now if I go to switch 2 here, this should look a little bit different. And as we can see that the port channel, the root, is forwarding on the port channel. One more thing I do want to check. And this might be a little bit different. So let's make sure that it's finished. Yep, and everything's finished. So SCP's finished converging, and we have a. So this is actually set correctly now, at least the way it's supposed to set up in the lab. Let's just also check a couple other stuff. So. So in the INT trunk, it's actually showing the port channel itself. So, and it's showing it as a 802.1Q. And it's showing as desirable. So we know that this is the side that's actually doing the negotiating. And I think that's all we need to cover for this lab. Again, just a couple of things that I wanted to go over is what we also learned here in real time is that not only do you have to make sure that the port mode is compatible with the port channel that you're applying it to, but also that the encapsulation is the same as well. And also just a quick note just showing you how to modify spanning tree to give the priority to the switch that you want. So again, spanning tree tends to work a little quirky on virtual machines, but otherwise, like I said, it's pretty easy to kind of make this make switch 1 the priority. So just to kind of read and show you guys that it's right up here, and that is to do a spanning tree VLAN 1 priority 0, and remember the increments are every 4096. So. But that's it for this lab, and next lab we will go over the different negotiating protocols for Ether channel, as typically we don't use the static Ether channeling as something in production because of how the failover would work. So again, we're going to kind of go over this. We'll go over PAGP and LACP on the next lab. See you folks later.